Hi everyone and welcome to podcast number 3. So this is week 6 already of 2023 and I'm releasing these podcasts like little projects, little case studies every 2 weeks. So today we have a fascinating conversation. Tom Delaney is one of the most interesting people that I've had pretty regular conversations with throughout the last few years. So every few months I'd talk to him and every few months he'd have something very, very interesting to say. So Tom was an archaeologist first of all, and he worked on history sites in England and Ireland. An archaeologist is a fascinating job. You're digging up the past and seeing what it can teach us about the way we need to live today. We also talk about his favourite part of Irish history from 1600 to the beginning of the 20th century, why it's so important, and what it teaches us about the way we live today. We are very, very much shaped by our past, and Tom explains how this period of our past shapes a lot of the mindsets and attitudes in Ireland today. We talk about how Ireland went from the poorest country in Europe to one of the wealthiest countries in Europe, which is very, very interesting. It's a topic I actually bring up quite a lot to different people. We then go on to talk about Tom's business. He's created a business literally from picking willow from the side of the roads. He started in the most simplest or modest of beginnings. He was driving around Mayo picking willow from the side of the road and making baskets out of it. It snowballed and he now has a very, very successful business that is full-time employment, and he has far more demand for his products than he can keep up with. So we talk about how he started, how the business developed, how he structures his working day so that he has time for creativity, how he makes sure he doesn't procrastinate too much, which is something we all battle with, how he makes sure he's productive, how he fits in his exercise and diet around his work day. So anyone who's thinking of starting a business of any kind, I think you'll be inspired by Tom's story. He started with the simplest and he now has a very, very successful business. We also then go on to talk about long-term European travel. Tom is one of the people who inspired me to go and travel to Europe. He lived in Berlin for 2 years, but while he was in Berlin, he traveled to about 10, 15 different countries, experienced a massive different amount of cultures and cities, learned German, traveled to Russia, a lot of fascinating and very, very funny stories. He also did it on a tiny budget. He basically only had the backpack on his back and no car for a lot of the trip, and still managed to experience so much and live happily and comfortably throughout Europe. We also talk about why Berlin is Berlin. It's a very unique city. He lived here for 2 years. He understands it deeply and how it ended up being the way it is today. So this is an interesting one. I know you're going to enjoy it, but just finally, to finish off the introduction, if you are wondering how am I affording my European travel? How am I making money while I'm away? Well, the answer is very, very simply, I only make money from one thing, and that is online coaching. If you are interested in online coaching where I help you dramatically change your health and your physical appearance and your general sense of well-being through education on nutrition, a personalized program, and then lifestyle and mindset advice, then contact me on the 100% page on Instagram, Facebook, or even TikTok. If you want to get in contact with me there, I'll set up a free consultation where I'll be able to tell you exactly how the system works. I currently have a team of clients that have started the year excellently, and I have no doubt in the next month or two, you're going to see some of the most impressive results I've ever achieved through online coaching. And I've already achieved dozens of very, very impressive results. If you want to check them out on Instagram or Facebook, 100% page, you can have a look there and you'll get a good idea of what exactly is involved in my online coaching. So without any further ado, we're going to jump into the podcast as usual. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this, don't forget to send it on to a friend, someone you know will enjoy it too. 3, 2, 1, live. Today I am with basket maker, archaeologist, and one of the most interesting men I know, Tom Delaney. How are you, Tom?
Doing good now. Yeah.
So first I thought I'd ask you, is that you were an archaeologist in England?
Yep.
So how did you end up there? How did you end up picking that as a course in college?
Oh, good question. I started off where I had a year out from school, and I didn't have a third language. And you need a third one if you want to go to university.
Yes.
And I had just had a ton of different jobs. At that time, I was actually working down on a pig farm in Cork.
Yeah.
And then...
How did you end up there?
A lad from the town here, from Clamorris. And then after that, I got into a shop. So I knew that for that year out that I was going to have from school, I had to do a language. So I done French. I don't remember. I haven't had a lick of French now today, so how I done it, I don't know. But yeah, so I done French, and then when I went into NUIG, again, I just knew that I wanted to do something. I was thinking in the back of my head.
So you did French in that year out only to add that to your leaving cert so you could go to college.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. When I finished my secondary school, I got forestry in UCD.
Yes.
And I was interested in it, and still do have a bit of an interest in it, but I didn't want to go to Dublin. I was adamant I wasn't going to Dublin.
Why?
Just the big smoke. Didn't want to go. And
too intimidating.
Yeah. Oh yeah. People be up there.
You couldn't trust them.
No, you want to be awful careful. I'd be one of those cultures going around asking guards for directions.
Yeah. So I actually have that shared fascination with history because I wanted to be an archaeologist myself.
No way.
Yeah, I did. That was the first thing I wanted to be when I was young, was an archaeologist. But I didn't end up doing history in secondary school, but I did it then again in third level. You know? So it was funny. Where does that interest in history come from that you wanted to be an archaeologist? Because it's not very common. It's not awful rare, but it's not very common. Yeah.
I'd say two places. We had a really good primary school teacher in where I went to primary school in Bacon. Vinnie Kelly was his name, whopper teacher. And his brother is also a local historian, so his brother has wrote multiple books about the area.
About which area is this?
About Bacon, Ballyhonus, Brickens, Logboy.
Okay.
Over in East Mayo. And so in his class, kind of like you could get him going on a tangent.
Yes.
You know, like we'd be supposed to be doing maths, but we'd have him talking about a wedge tomb or something like that, or a standing stone. So like this happened a lot. And one of my best friends today, John McNeve, he'd also vouch for this, that we would get him going off early in the morning, and he wouldn't come back until the end of the day. He'd be talking about archaeology and history. And
but isn't it funny? I remember getting teachers off on tangents as well in secondary school and primary school. It's always history they ended up going off on the tangents. It was never really any other subject. History and sport, but sports, it was nearly sports history.
Yeah.
It's funny. So that's was where you got the first
and also as well, actually, my aunt. So I had to read a few things because I had a speech impediment when I was younger, and I would only read things that I was interested in. Like I remember they were like, I was given the Chronicles of Narnia.
Yes.
And sure, I'd have no interest in this old stuff, like.
Yeah.
But my aunt bought me a year's subscription to the National Geographic. So I had a stack of them, and in it there was plenty of archaeology, loads of archaeology, and very like niche specific things. But you'd get a grasp of it even for a young lad, you know. And
was there a particular epoch in history or topic that you liked studying about, or was it all history?
Oh, good question. Yeah, like, to be honest, I honed in on specific things at different stages. Yeah. And even when I was younger, I didn't think that I was like preordained to be an archaeologist at all. Yeah. In fact, I thought maybe that I'd work on a building site. I worked in construction nearly all my life. And it wasn't until I went to NUIG, if you do arts undenominated...
They'll beat the arts. They'll beat the construction out here.
Exactly. Yeah. They have these big sticks and they go around concourse with them.
Making sure that there's no construction left in anyone, nothing.
That you're not
nothing labour intensive.
That you're not able to use your hands. But anyway, if you do arts undenominated for like the first few months or maybe even the first year, you can do anything. And I had all the time in the world, so I done archaeology and stuck with it, and I thought it was very interesting. But so after NUIG, then I finished college, and I saw that there was a site.
Just before you go finishing college, what does archaeology look like in college?
There's multiple different courses.
How is it different, say, to just normal history, say?
It's different because archaeology is the study of the human story through material culture.
Okay.
So we're not looking at historical documents and things like that. We're actually looking at artifacts.
Okay.
So, and also as well in archaeology, a lot of it is about the methodology of how we dig the ground.
Right.
And the process of digging the ground.
Yes.
Because very often you're going into a site where there's no written records of it.
Okay.
So you have to find out as much information as you can from digging in the ground.
From the ground, yeah. When I think of archaeology, I think of Tutankhamun and Egypt.
Oh, yeah.
That's what would have sparked my initial interest in archaeology, is nearly like treasure hunter type thing.
Yeah.
Is that an accurate starting point, or is that a childish one?
No, it's not accurate. Like, so often you're just scrabbling around in the mud.
Right.
You know, that's more accurate.
So you're not picking up lumps of gold so often, no?
No. A lot of the times you're digging a ditch that somebody dug as a defensive settlement. Okay. And in the ditch is fields of waste material. Sometimes it's backfilled. You know, when heavy machinery came in the 20th century, we bulldozed a lot of land and diggers, and that changed the landscape. I can only speak from an Irish and UK perspective there, but very often that's what you're doing. You're just digging a field from a ditch. And there is specific features that crop up, but that's the main thing that you're doing.
And okay, so that brings you to the end of college. Yeah. Okay, and then how do you move from college to an actual job as an archaeologist?
Yeah.
Is it difficult to get a job? Is it, or are they looking for archaeologists?
They are looking for archaeologists, and you can get a job in it easily if you want. And sometimes you might not even need an archaeology degree. You might get onto an archaeology site as a GO, as a labourer. But say, for example, the course in NUIG is not as site specific as the one in Sligo or even the one in UCD. The one in NUIG, it's kind of geared up to be done with a master's, the master's in landscape archaeology. And I didn't do it. I didn't do the one in landscape archaeology, but from meeting other archaeologists, it seems like the one in UCD and the one in Sligo IT are the best.
Yes.
The one in NUIG, you really have to do the masters with it, even though you can work. But I'll just give a small example. One of the things that we use to record in archaeology is a context sheet, and these sheets are uniform from site to site and from company to company. But when I finished NUIG, I didn't even know what these things were. But if you went to Sligo, you would have.
Okay.
You know,
okay.
So.
And are you, when you're just digging a hole in the ground or digging in a ditch, how careful do you have to be compared to a construction worker, say? Is it like super careful? And how do you differentiate from an archaeologist site to any old site where they're just building a house or a building or something like that, where they're not careful?
Yeah. Well, for every house now that's being built, there is a zone of archaeological importance.
Okay.
So, and this will be sorted out at the planning stage.
Yes.
So, say for example, like if you want to build a house in somewhere with rich archaeological importance, maybe Mayo Abbey would be a good example.
Yes.
You would have to get the land surveyed, and in surveying the land, you get to find out there's a lot of things that can be told from these surveys. This was one of my last jobs that I had in England, was carrying out a geophysical survey. So before ground is being broken, there'll be a topographical survey, there'll be multiple types of things done to gather information on the site before any ground has been broke. And that can be even traced through the historical record, whether they have accounts of the local town nearby or whatever, so that they can have some sort of an idea of what's in the ground before anything is being done. We rarely dig in the ground where we don't know what it is. Before the ground is being broke, we've a fair idea.
And who's hiring the archaeologist? Is it the government? Is it a government agency, or is it private, or how does it work that way? Who's hiring?
Yeah. So for most of the jobs,
who's assigning you to these jobs?
For most of the jobs I've worked on so far, it's been for road projects. One of them was for the HS2 there in the UK. But they've mostly all been for road realignment projects. So in Ireland it's European money, and in the UK I don't know where they're getting that money from, but yeah,
Boris Johnson.
And also as well, actually, these massive data centres and wind farms now that they're building, they also have to go through the archaeological process.
Yes.
So the owners of them, I'm sure the investors, they would have to pay for an archaeologist on site.
And how that can hold up the process, I'd say, of building a long time, can it?
It's funny, everyone always says like, oh, you're holding up the job and you're taking taxpayers' money.
Right. Okay.
And I sort of play into that for the crack.
Yes.
But it's not true, because the surveys are done so far in advance, they've already factored in the time that it's going to take to dig the site, even if there was something.
Okay.
And if there isn't something, you just crack on with it, you know?
Okay. So then, outside of your own archaeological work, you worked in Ireland and England as an archaeologist. What other epochs or parts of history have you enjoyed studying about or learning from? Because I'm sure if you're interested in history at all, even as a beginner or as a historian, you soon realise that a study of history is a study of yourself, really.
True, yeah.
And it's almost like studying psychology, studying history, because when you're studying what people used to do, you're studying what you would have done in the same circumstances. Is there anything that you feel people should know more about to understand themselves more and to understand the world more? Any particular epoch or race or civilization?
I think from an Irish perspective, the most fascinating one I've found is the movements of Irish people.
Yes.
In particularly from, we'd say, the Act of Union in 1801 onwards, but maybe even since the Tudor reconquest of Ireland in the 1600s. Like we lived in different places throughout our history on the island.
Okay.
And this really reached its zenith, we'll say, during the land war. It was the end of feudalism or serfdom or whatever you want to call it. And at that time we were living in clusters of these hovels, shacks. And then we had the Wyndham Land Act, where it was a transfer of land from private to public ownership. And then from that, then we had the Congested Districts Board, which divided out the land between people. So,
yes.
And go on.
Sorry, what time frame was this?
So the Tudor reconquest of Ireland is the 16th century, but
from there until...
Yeah, from there until the Act of Union in 1801. That was really when Irish colonialism started. We could say that we've been ruled since 1169 with the Normans, but they became more Irish than the Irish themselves. That's a well-known phrase.
Okay.
But what I think is really fascinating is in those years, from the Tudor conquest of Ireland all the way up until, say, the Act of Union in 1801, and those 100 years after that, the way that we lived in that time period, and how tough the Irish were, is fascinating for me. And then what I really find fascinating is how we changed from living like that in these small clusters, like hovels, nothing glamorous, how we transitioned from that to the way that we live today.
Yes.
And especially what I suppose my interest is piqued by the fact that the land war was fought, or the first shots of the land war was fought here in East Mayo. Well, all over Mayo really, but...
And this was a countrywide war?
Yeah.
And it was first started in East Mayo?
Yeah, the first meeting was in Irishtown.
Jeez, I never... I'd be very ignorant to that part of history. So I do know the era that you're talking about in Ireland. I wouldn't know much about that at all.
Yeah,
it sounds fascinating. I know that say less than 100 years ago in Ireland, people were dying of cholera and TB, which what you'd associate with some of the poorest people in the world now. It's hard to believe that people in Claremorris were dying of that. And I know that at the turn of the 19th into the 20th century, there was more Irish people in London than there was in Dublin.
Okay.
I read that in Churchill's book, or not the one he wrote himself, but the one that was wrote about him. So that area of history, what would be the benefit of learning about that part of history specifically for you?
So out in Brickens there, where I grew up, you can do a walk. It's a walk where the old landlord's estate is. And I look at these old maps a lot. We have some great resources in Ireland and they're free. One of them is the Historical Environment Viewer. And in it, all historical sites are marked. And you can also go back and look at old maps that, because you have to see it as well from an empire perspective. Ireland was surveyed in the same sense that England would have been surveyed. We were very much part of the empire. So we have these in-depth maps. We've the historic 6-inch and the historic 25-inch. And what I found fascinating was these houses, and you can see the foundations of these houses if you walk there today. And this was a village, and the village has since been dispersed. And I think that that's key in understanding why we live a certain way and why we live the way we do. Like even today, why we live in bungalows like this with big windows.
Yes.
This isn't normal in other countries. They have different types of windows to us.
Yes, I've actually noticed this. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and you heard of the term daylight robbery?
Yeah.
That there used to be a window tax.
Yeah, yeah. I actually heard about that through Bitcoin. You know, Bitcoin is...
Yeah.
Do you know much about Bitcoin?
Nothing.
Well, essentially it's many things, but one of them is the study of tax and how the government takes money off us and how fair or unfair different levels of tax have been throughout history. So I learned about daylight robbery. It's a brilliant story,
isn't it?
So basically, for the listener, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm getting this story wrong, but there was a tax put on houses, or like a property tax, and they decided how much tax to put on your house by the amount of windows you had. So what people used to do was cover up or board up windows so they'd have to pay less tax, so less daylight could go into the house, and they called it daylight robbery.
And that's how the half door became popularised. You know, the half door on Irish cottages. Yes. So that they could close the bottom half to probably stop cats and rats getting in, and they could open up the top half to let a bit of light in. But one of the things why I was so fascinated in the way Irish people lived was because if you dig in the ground in Ireland, you're going to find a ring fort. Yes. They're everywhere. And
what's the difference between a ring fort and a fairy fort that you always hear are bad luck?
I don't know, to be honest. This fairy fort thing has actually creeped into academia as well, and I don't like it.
It's a ghost story element to it, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think Oh, there's some really credited academics going around using that term.
Yes.
Like for example, he's never going to hear me anyway. So Mangon McGann, I don't know. Do you know that character?
No.
I know I like him and I support him. I went to see him in Ballina recently, but he just blatantly uses the term fairy forts, and I don't know, is he trying to be sensational or what is he doing? And he even writes some opinion editorials for the Irish Independent and the Times or whatever, and he openly calls them fairy forts, and I'd be scratching my head thinking what is going on?
Why?
The main term I think that should be referred to them is enclosures. They're just circular enclosures, and they could have been, or they would have been used for enclosing animals at night because cattle raiding was so big, or just one family unit or extended family, and everyone would have their own one. But I was just interested in the phases in which we transitioned from certain ways. You know, like say for example, today Irish people are obsessed with land and they die for their land, whereas 100 years ago we didn't even own it.
Yes.
You know, so it's this paradox where people are hoarding land and obsessed with it when we didn't even own it 100 years ago.
Okay.
And that Wyndham Land Act that they fought for, so the Mayo branch of the Land League became the national branch.
Yes.
Parnell got on board.
That's Michael Davitt.
And Michael Davitt,
yes.
And so we need a fact checker on this podcast if somebody wants to do it. Someone in the comments.
Kevin Lynch will do it.
Good. So I'm going to say that I think that Parnell, because the Fenian movement had started to gather serious weight, and Davitt was a Fenian. Damn, I need to. But Parnell wasn't, and I think that the story goes that if Home Rule went through, and if Parnell came into power, he said to Davitt, "The first thing I do is I put you in jail." But the land war was a success, and we got the Wyndham Land Act, so we got what we wanted. And these absentee landlords, they didn't want to be in Ireland anymore. They weren't able to live here. It was very inhospitable. It had got so bad in Kilvine that it was labelled the angriest parish in the country.
I'm sure it's probably still labelled as that.
Definitely. I don't doubt it.
I had a few school friends from Kilvine.
Yeah.
And they were tough guys.
No, they sure were. And out in Kilvine there was an account of, I think, 10,000 people came up to protest an eviction. And it got so unruly that they had to make a makeshift RIC barracks halfway between Ballyhonus and Irishtown.
Okay. And just again, I'm going to ask, around what year was this? Roughly.
It's between 1870 and 1890. I don't know the exact year the Wyndham Land Act was signed, but that was actually the biggest transfer of land from private to public ownership. The only one that eclipsed it afterwards was the Russian Revolution, when they overthrew the Tsars. So that's how big it was. But the ins and outs of that, I haven't travelled down that rabbit hole of who got what.
Right,
but,
and how they got it.
And how they got it, but that was a pretty big deal. And I think that this may be a nice hot take for your podcast, but I think that the reason why not too many Mayo men fought in the 1916 Rising, you know, we just had the 100 years of remembrance, and my interest in it was mostly west of Ireland centric, we'll say, in particularly Mayo and Galway, because I just thought if there was any boys that would throw down, it'd be boys from the west.
Yes.
But they didn't, not in any large way. Lee Mellows led a rebellion in Galway, but I think that it was that they were so pacified by the results of the land war that they perhaps viewed the rebellion in Dublin as this upper middle class rebellion, and that they had already got what they wanted.
Well, do you know that recent RTE 3-part series on the Civil War?
No, I don't, sadly.
Brendan Gleeson was narrating it.
Okay.
It's excellent. It's actually very, very good. Now, again, it's not a part of history that I'm very well researched in, but he did say that a lot of the harshest fighters in the Civil War were Kerry, Mayo, and I think was it Donegal.
Okay. Oh well,
they don't seem to have fought in the Rising as prominently, like you said.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah, they could have joined the IRA later. Like, I know that there was a West Mayo branch of the IRA and all of that. In fact, even my friend's grandfather was in the IRA, and they have photos of him, and they still have his gun and all of that. But anyway, yeah.
Okay, that's fascinating stuff. It's fascinating stuff. I'll be sure to start researching that a little bit more. Before we switch off history though, I've been asking this question a lot lately for a few different reasons. Now, a lot, I mean, a handful of times in the last year and a half. But we went in Ireland from maybe the 1950s or the 1960s, from the poorest or the second poorest in Europe, where they were now one of the richest, second richest, is it, in Europe? How, in as few words as you can, did we go from one to the other? Was it good politics? Was it luck? Was it, I've got a good few different reasons when I've asked this question.
I'd say I'd be speaking out of school, But
it is a fascinating.
It's very
question
fascinating
to ask or even think about it.
I think that,
I don't think we take enough stock of just how far we've come.
True.
If you listen to the news or the radio, you'd swear the politicians in this country, like any country, are doing nothing but wrong. But they must have done a huge amount right to go from here to there. Or was it all luck from American businesses basing themselves here? One man said to me, JFK coming to Ireland was a huge inspiration to the politicians and to the people of what can be achieved by Irish people. There was the tax on the international corporations. There was the free education for secondary, then free education for third level. What do you think?
I think I'd throw into that mix rural electrification.
Okay.
I think that rural electrification is definitely no secret. People knew that once you could refrigerate milk, that was going to be beneficial to people, and getting it to the market. And all of that, and then we could export more stuff. But if we say,
and if we export more stuff, we make more money. Yeah.
And we had to, so we'll say, since our country was declared a republic, we can say that there was serious sanctions and trade embargoes put on us at the start that turned us into a rural agrarian backwater in Europe. And since
who put those sanctions on us?
The British.
Yeah,
and we had to suck up to the Europeans then. But sure, after World War II, everyone in Europe was in bed with each other anyway. It was a big rebuilding process. But if you go around the UK, for example, you always meet people and they're like, "Oh, my mother is Irish," or "My grandmother is Irish." Yes. And if you see, or if you look at those CSO records, there was 800,000 people. Again, we need a fact checker.
Yeah.
There was 800,000 people born in this new republic that we had from, I think, 1930 up until the 1950s. There was 800,000 people born.
Okay.
So it was nice to think that we were able to sustain a population on such an agrarian economy. But in 10 years, from the 50s to the 60s, 500,000 people left. And that was a major brain drain. And this is well documented. I'm not flinging shit at a wall here saying this. And the majority of those people that left were all women. So that'll tell you a thing about how good this country was for women. It probably wasn't a great place to be.
Well, he actually mentions that in that 3-part series that was on RT about the Civil War, that when things settled down after the Civil War and De Valera got into power, one of the few things that both, now I'm quoting the documentary on this, one of the few things that both sides or both parties agreed on was to reduce the amount of influence women had and to go backwards in terms of women's rights and that.
Oh, definitely.
Why would they do that after
ruled from Rome?
Rome from Rome, okay. But they were happy to take women soldiers and have them play a major part in the Civil War. But then as soon as the Civil War ended, to go backwards on a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. And
that's because of Rome.
I would say so. And I would also say Dave hadn't a clue how to run a country, but like that's another hot take.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely hadn't a clue. He had someone else in his ear.
Well, that's interesting that I had heard that in the documentary, and then you say what they didn't mention in the documentary was that 500,000 women left in that exact period that they were talking about.
Yeah, well, that's from the 1950s to the 1960s. In 10 years, 500,000 people left. The majority of them were women. Not all of them, but the majority.
And where did they go?
America and the UK. A lot to the UK, honestly. In England, it's really common to meet people who've all got an Irish grandmother or an Irish mother. It's very common. Okay,
so that is, we'll switch gears a little bit.
Yeah, actually, another thing on that as well is, you know how they say, like, Sean Lamass came in and, swashbuckling, and then we were, like, no longer seen as the sick man of Europe.
Yes.
And things like that. David McWilliams speaks about it so much, where like we had that low corporation tax and we attracted foreign direct investment. So like we were a country so small, we didn't even have natural resources to get an industry off the ground, even if we tried.
Yes.
It wasn't like as if we were able to mine cobalt or iron,
Yeah.
So we brought in these companies, and in Bernard O'Hara's book, Exploring Mayo, he's a historian from Classer, outside Swinford. In his book, he talks about how he brought 5 companies to Mayo. He brought Hollister in Ballina, Allergan in Westport, but it was called something else at the time. Baxter, I think it was called Travenol, and the one in Ballyhaunis, Iman Casings, but I think it was his grandfather, Rafiq, and maybe one more. These companies are still here.
Still huge employers.
Huge employers.
So I've been to Poland 3 times with my girlfriend, and they don't have any of that. They don't have these huge American companies in what feels like every town in Ireland, employing people and bringing a huge economic boost to all these small little areas. So we nearly take it for granted. I know I always took it for granted just growing up. These factories were just there. But that's not the case in an awful lot of countries. And just what you said there on the no natural resources, it is fascinating to look into the fact that Holland or the Netherlands has always been extremely self-sufficient and wealthy, and never really in much economic trouble at all, despite no natural resources and half the country in the sea. And then you have your Venezuelans who couldn't be more rich in natural resources, and they're just basket cases for as long as there's a country there. There's just corruption. So
very true.
It is very interesting. So that's why I look at Ireland and I'm like, well, despite all these different small little things that you could attribute to luck, there is an element of it must have been a certain amount of political skill involved. It can't all have been luck.
No, you're right. Yeah.
Is there any leader in particular that you admire?
In Ireland?
In terms of that era of taking us from the bottom of the table to the top in terms of wealth in Europe?
Not really. I just think right now at this position that we're in, just be lucky that we that we got here. Yes. And I think that speaking English helps us.
Of course.
As much and all as I'd love the Irish language to be back, and I'd love this to be carried out in Irish or whatever, but speaking English helped us in that regard. There's probably a luck element to it, and perhaps having such a large diaspora more so than any leader. But like even at the turn of the century, John Millington Synge, a writer, went to the Aran Islands, and the Aran Islanders knew more about the Spanish-American Civil War than they knew about anything else, and were wondering would the Spanish-American War affect their grain prices and meal coming over. So like we were always that
was the Mexicans and
the Spanish-American War.
The Americans, I've heard about that briefly as well. That was right before World War I, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we'll switch gears a little bit from history, which we could stay. You could have your own weekly podcast about history every single week, which I do want to have more of. I want to definitely have a lot of history on the podcast. So I'd be happy to have you on again to talk just solely different history topics, because I don't think enough people actually take the time to learn about history. And if they did, they'd understand everything better. They'd understand from, like we've touched there, on food production, economics, war, women's rights. Everything is just wrapped up into history. Yeah. So like you can't really learn enough about it.
Definitely.
Especially from a perspective of finding out how did we get to here. And the more rooted in fact you can have your knowledge of the world in how you got to here, your family, your country, your town, the better you're off. The more solid your standing is, and the less likely you are to be pulled into mad radical ideas left or right.
Yeah.
So we're moving on to beautiful handcrafted baskets I've written here. So how do you go from being an archaeologist to making baskets? Was it something you always did, or was it something you learned later, or how was the idea of Auld Crafty born?
So in between working in archaeology, I had worked on building sites as well. I've done every type of job you can imagine on the building sites, and I worked in retail too for a while. And with archaeology, you have to move around all the time. So I was all over the UK and all over Ireland, and I was getting a bit sick of it. And I knew that if I was going to move home to Mayo, not that we're stuck for jobs, I just said how many factories we have in Mayo, like there certainly isn't a job crisis here. And there's some good paying ones as well, but I just wanted my own thing in case I had to go on the road again. I could bring the baskets with me. And my grandfather was a basket maker.
Yes.
He was a farmer and a basket maker, and the truth be told, all Ould ones used to know how to make baskets back in them days.
Okay. Why? Why?
Out of necessity.
Okay.
Yeah, we have some indigenous Irish baskets that are only made here, and they're utility baskets. They're used for moving and carrying and mooching around, you know yourself.
Yeah.
We have one very famous one called the creel, and it's probably our only indigenous basket, but also skids and kishogues were used throughout here, but its origins aren't as clearly defined as a creel. A creel is 100% Irish, and you might not know them now what I'm talking about.
Okay.
But there's
we'll get some examples and photos.
Good, yeah. I'll take a quote there from one of my friends in town. The creel is as Irish as a pint of Guinness left out in the rain. It's iconic. Like, do you know this photograph?
I'll take that phrase. I'll use that again.
Do you know this photograph with it's a donkey with two creels either side, and the kids are filling it up with turf, and the kids just happen to be ginger?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I do.
Yeah, I think it was John Hind who took the photograph, and it became a postcard. Like that image of the creel or the donkey with the creels either side is still in people's minds. I know that in Derry's there near Park, because I've the shop down in Turlock at the minute.
In Harkins.
In Harkins in Castlebar. And behind there in that hill complex, I think it would be maybe the same hills that where Crockmile would be, but maybe a bit to the northeast of it. This village, Derry's, even in the 80s, they were still bringing turf down from the bog with the creels. So that's not too long ago at all. And there was traditional creel makers around. But anyway, that's not even what I...
Well,
yeah,
I enjoy going off on tangents.
Yeah.
No more than your old history teacher.
Yeah.
I think I specialise in going off on mad tangents. That's very interesting.
So yeah, my grandfather knew how to make them.
Yes.
And he could make other baskets as well. And then, but...
And that you knew that from an early age?
No.
No.
No. My father then, when I was younger, was able to get a basket to a stage. If you saw how close this man got, it's painstaking. He was an hour away from finishing them. And we done it together a few times. We even done hurdles as well, where you put down the willow rods like that and you weave in between them. But my father could make a base, he could stake it up, and he could weave the sides, but he could never do the border. And when I look back now and I think about it, I'm like, oh man, he was so close. Like, he was so close. Yeah, when I came home from Germany and whatnot, I decided that I needed to have something that was my own thing. Yeah, I could do the days on the building sites and whatnot, but you needed to have your own thing, just as a bit of security, you know, a bit of a side hustle. I don't know.
Okay.
And basket making was going to be it. I thought for a while that I might do stonemasonry.
Okay, but you said security, and then you said basket making. So how in your head did you figure that making baskets, which isn't a usual career path for many people at all, was a secure source of income?
That's so true. Yeah, well, yeah, I also thought too that I would start the basket making and then I'd go back to my old job and that I'd play the two off together, like I'd throw together a basket in the evening.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Like a side hustle type thing. Okay.
And it would supplement an income. But, so that would have been only 2020. So this is the start of 2022 when I actually started the business.
Okay.
So I had a good bit of time to mess around and perfect the baskets and make sure that they were right.
And that was when you learned how to make a basket, was 2020?
Yeah. Yeah.
During COVID, during lockdowns, or
and it wasn't even until the end of 2020 when I actually harvested. So everyone that I knew didn't have willow, so I rang around basket makers and they were like, "No, sorry, don't have any willow." So I was like, right,
I have to grow my own.
No, we're doing this the old-fashioned way. I'm going out to the hedgerow.
Right.
So
the hedgerow is the side of the road.
The side of the road. Yeah. People must have thought I was a madman. You'd see me there between Clonmara and Ballyhonus. I'd be out on the roadside with a high vis on. I'd be out on the...
Foraging for willow.
I swear to God, I'd be out there with a high vis on and an old snips. And I gathered up a lot of willow that winter. And I made my first few baskets out of it. And
might be a stupid question, but like the willow that you're just getting at the side of the road, right? Is that as good a quality as anything that's farmed or specifically, or
no.
Is it? No, it's not as good.
No, it's not as good.
Why?
It's it probably would come good if you could plant it yourself and maintain it and coppice it. But at the minute, it's not a weaving variety. In fact, I don't even know what variety it is. It just looks like I can bend it. So I give it a go.
Yeah.
And yeah, I have taken cuttings off it from the roadside and I have it planted now. And I'll be harvesting it this February. But ideally, if I could have my own way, the council, if they could just cut the hedges in March, then the rods would get a full growing season. They'd get a chance to go to seed as well, which would be great for the wildlife and whatnot. And then I could come in January and February and harvest what I need, and then they could cut it. But what happened this year, unfortunately, was I was going around Mayo and I was marking everywhere where there was willow on a document on my phone.
Okay.
And then I was also marking it then on Google Maps.
Okay, so, were you driving around in your car specifically just looking for willow, or was it just on the way somewhere you spotted it on the side of the road?
Oh yeah, I'd be on the way somewhere.
Okay.
And I'd be like, I'll come back there now in the winter.
Okay.
And so what I've noticed now is I've driven a lot of those roads since again,
yeah,
and the hedges have been cut.
Oh, no.
And they've just been cut there in September. So that's good to nobody, because you have to harvest the willow in the winter months when the sap has gone out of the rod.
Okay, and the sap out of the rod, that's like...
To be honest,
explain that.
I think that you need to get the sap out of the rod because...
I think I know what that is, but what does it mean?
Well, the sap is like a sugar inside in the plant.
Yes.
And the sap rises in warmer temperatures. And when it gets cold, it goes away. But the reason why you want it gone is because it'll only lead to the rod snapping.
Yes.
So that's why you want it gone.
Okay. And so when you started making the baskets and foraging for willow in 2020, you said the willow wasn't as good quality because it was at the side of the road.
Mm.
Did you still make baskets out of it, even though it wasn't a great quality?
Oh yeah.
So you just started with what you had. You weren't going to let the fact that it wasn't ideal stop you.
Yeah.
And did you ever make any money from that stuff just at the side of the road?
No, but I gave some as presents to people, and that was when I sort of knew I had something.
Okay.
You know.
So literally, you're learning how to a new skill, and you're learning also how to create a business from literally the hedge at the side of the road.
Exactly.
There's a lot of ingenuity there.
There's a lot to unpack.
But it's very...
Yeah.
Like, not only is it skills and you're learning a new discipline, you're also creating something out of nothing. So it's entrepreneurial. So there's the skill elements to it, there's the entrepreneurial element to it, and there's also the fact that, like, so many people, they think they have to have the perfect setup to start. You know, I meet this in fitness all the time, but in many businesses, if they're not starting with 100 grand behind them, sure, what's the point? But you're literally starting with €0 and the rushes at the side of the road. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another one as well, is that I had about 2 years before 2020 where I let basket making stew. Do you know this type of way?
Yeah.
I was in Germany and I was in a city and I was far away from any hedge or anything. And even something as simple as digging in the ground, I would have been happy with.
Yeah.
You know, or making compost or sowing potatoes. And these are like awful simplistic things, but like, I don't like going around on trams or anything like that, you know. It'd be nice to see it for a few days. So I really just let the basket making stew. And my father was very interested in it.
Right.
But
I think that's the case with a lot of ideas, is someone rarely gets an idea and acts on it the day after. They usually get an idea and Jesus, they could be sitting on it for 10 years.
Exactly, yeah.
But at least 6 months or a year is normal. You know, even someone to contact me for personal training, they'll say, oh, I found out about you last year or the year before. You know, they'll never find out about me and then start doing it the day after. You know, so to take that bit of time to stew on the idea is normal, but I don't think it's productive all the time. We need to take a bit of action quicker, you know.
Definitely. And
I'd be very guilty of that too, just stewing on this idea for a long time, you know.
Yeah, so I let it fester. And by the time then when I actually went doing it, I'd say I had all my research done. I didn't even have any tools. I didn't have any basket making tools. But the best thing about it is that the main tools you need are your 2 hands.
Okay.
So the first few baskets I made with just a knife and my 2 hands. That's all I had. And then I made a lot of baskets like that.
Yeah.
With just a knife and my 2 hands.
And would you see that period as like honing your skills type thing?
Oh, I look back in that period and I think, Jesus, I made life awful hard for myself.
Okay, yeah. So as in...
Yeah.
How do you mean you made life hard for yourself? As in, like, you just started with very, very little that it made everything harder?
Yeah, and I think back then I wanted to make big baskets and small ones and all different types of ones, and every basket that I try to do, I try to reinvent the wheel. Whereas if I just stuck with one basket and perfected the base, the side weaving and the border, don't even bother with a handle, just perfect those things, I would have been in a better position. But back then I wanted to do it all. I was doing all sorts of crazy stuff.
Yeah, but I can, you know, it's a teething process, and like you're learning as you go. And no matter what the industry, people do tend to overcomplicate things at the start. I know it's certainly the case for me as well. Starting my business, you know, the simpler you can keep it, the better. But at the start, the tendency is to think that we have to add complications instead of reduce them to make things better.
Yeah, if I reduced it, I'd have got to my destination quicker.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So like the process of mastery in anything is usually a reduction and taking away of unnecessary parts rather than adding in more and more complexity.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So that's your basket. So take us a little bit through. I've been out in the workshop. So take us through. So you had showed me where you were planting the willow. Okay, so you plant it. Then, from what I gather, correct me if I'm wrong here. So you plant it in the ground. It grows. The sap goes out of it. Then you dry it. You cut it and dry it. What type of knife do you use? Is it just a normal Stanley knife, or is it a traditional knife for this particular job?
Traditionally, they would have used a cutting hook, but I actually don't have one. I probably just use a snips this winter. It'll be fine. If you have a big willow field, you can get a machine in to do it. Maybe that's something for down the line, but right now, no. Okay.
So you're just going out and hand cutting the willow with snips, and then you're bundling it up, putting an elastic band around it, is it?
Oh yeah, or just some sort of a tie.
Some sort of a tie, and then you're drying it in the shed.
Yeah, and then you also grade the willow by height.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I'm to make it
and the taller the better? No?
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily, because if it gets awful tall, the butt of the rod will be really thick.
Yes.
So like,
which you do see on some baskets. You see these massive thick bits of willow that are, you know, that they're almost like sticks, aren't they? Yeah,
maybe they're on the turf baskets and stuff, but for a lot of like the smaller baskets, the round shoppers, the skibs, I'd be using 4 foot or 5 foot rods. So I'd keep them nice and straight and a nice even size the whole way up.
Okay.
I don't want them getting too woody at the bottom.
Okay, and they're drying in the shed for how long?
About 3 months.
And then what happens next? So after they dry in the shed for 3 months, you go from dried to you start crafting them then? Yeah,
you have to soak them 1 day for every foot to make them pliable.
Okay.
So say for example,
you just soak them in normal water.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm actually soaking them in. I'm soaking them in like a pond, fen type area. Do you know that wetland out the front of my house? I don't know if you saw that. There's like a fording point there where a farmer gets into his land where he actually has to go through the water, through the pond, and I'm just soaking it alongside it. It's in a deep drain there, but it's a steady flow of fresh water that eventually drains away into the Manula River. So it isn't stagnant or anything like that. In fact, I actually fell into that hole not too long ago.
Did you have to get pulled out?
I fell in and I had the willow in front of me and I'm weighing it down with some timbers, and I had just got a workaway to help me for the next while, and it was her first day, and there I was down at the pond, and I fell face first into the willow, and I pushed myself back, and then because I pushed myself back, my feet just went straight in, and I slipped down into the bank up to here. And I was just like flapping, and I eventually got out, and what could you say to this person? But after coming from Canada over to meet a basket maker, and he's after falling into the pond up to his neck in water, I don't know. So
the workaway, I went out to the house on that day. There was people helping you make the bird feeders, I think it was, in the sitting room.
Yeah.
So how does that work? I actually met a couple of them in one of the places I stayed in Cape Town. I'd never heard about it before you.
It's the best thing I ever done.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, on a few of these start your own business courses, they try to get you to be a creative director of your own business,
right,
especially if you have a craft business. And it's more about delegating jobs that you can't do if you have to be making. So basically, I'm the manufacturer here, so my two hands have to be on a piece making. I would give them the jobs of marketing, emailing, making posters, even just a simple thing like what you saw, they were tying the handle onto the bird feeder.
Yeah.
You know, so all them jobs I would delegate, and in return, at its core of Workaway, it has to be cultural exchange.
Okay, so Workaway is an app first and foremost, is it?
It's an app.
Right. And you can sign up for it from anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world, yeah.
And what you try and do is you see these different businesses all around the world and you say, I'll go and work for you for free for food and a roof over my head.
Yeah, for food and a roof over their head. And it isn't like a 40-hour week or anything like that. It might just be 3 to 5 hours a day.
Right.
And it's very easy going. Like,
yes,
for example, with myself there, like some days they just do nothing, like just go off there and enjoy yourself. And,
yes.
Or I drop them into Castlebar or Westport, or they can go to Galway for the day or whatever.
Yes.
One of the first things I do with them when they land is I bring them straight down to the Museum of Country Life.
Okay.
And I give them a good 3 or 4 hours there, because that saves me a lot of talking. And it brings them up to speed, you know.
And how things run around here.
Yeah, and what's beautiful is that in the Museum of Country Life, there's a lot of basket making.
Okay.
A lot of creedles.
Okay.
So by the time they come back to me, they've only been in Mayo a day, and by the time they come back to me, they're an expert on creedles.
Okay.
So that's beautiful.
Okay, so the Museum of Country Life is a time saving thing for you.
It is. It's sort of a finishing school from it.
Okay, so they come from Canada. This girl,
yeah, France,
who saw you fall into the drain, the dike. There was a girl from France and a fella from Italy. When I was there that day, and they come and they help you for a roof over their head and to live in Mayo.
Yeah, yeah.
And how long do they usually stay for?
About a month.
Okay.
Yeah, about a month. Sometimes people might only stay 2 weeks. They might have another workaway lined up down in Clare or another place. Or we're very lucky where we are here is that we're near Knock. So for a lot of these people, they're flying in and out of Knock, and they're like, oh, I might actually go to Scotland, and you know, so there's a big turnover, and yeah, people are kind of there as well to gather as much information as you can. So I'm not there to like withhold any information about basket making or gatekeep anything. Like once they come into my house, it's pretty much an open book about how I run things and where we're going with it. And it's been great because they expect you to be organised.
So it's kind of like a foreign exchange student staying in your house.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
And what they're doing is helping you with your business.
Yeah.
And almost like Airbnb, then they'd rate whether Tom was a good person to stay with or not.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant idea.
It's a great system.
Yeah, because the girls who were the 2 French girls running a guest house that I was staying in over in Cape Town, they said it was the best thing ever. They loved it. They got to go to Cape Town and live for free more or less, as long as they worked their certain number of hours or whatever.
Yeah, and it's serious crack.
Yeah. Well, it depends who you get to live with.
True. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the Workaway. It's called Workaway.
Yeah.
And they help you craft or whatever else.
Yeah, like it's not that I don't trust anyone making the products. It's that people are paying for me to make them.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that would be, and besides, the time that it would take me to show someone how to make a basket in a month, it just doesn't make sense.
It's not something you can just pick up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if somebody is eager to learn, I would always start them off on Bridget's crosses.
Okay.
because...
And do you think everyone should learn how to make a bridges cross?
Like in general?
Yeah.
Just for the crack, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it isn't, yeah.
I would, yeah. That's actually, maybe making baskets isn't something I'd have the skill to do, but the bridges cross is probably something I would look at and think, geez, I should have learned to make one of them.
Yeah, I actually think anyone can make a basket.
Okay.
Yeah, like there's no like special thing to it.
It's practice.
Yeah, yeah. And even after a while, like what I told you, how I was stressing myself reinventing the wheel with every basket, I face into a basket now and I make it without even thinking. And I look back on that time and I'm like, oh, that wasn't too long ago.
Yes.
And, you know, the odd basket that I make is, you know, there's still an odd dodgy one that I throw into the fire.
Yes.
So, like, if the shape gets out of the way on you, I'm not selling it.
Okay.
It'll be a gift or whatever. The shape is a big thing that people begin and can just go on them, do you know?
Yes, yes, yes.
But yeah, in the time that it would take to teach a workaway to make a basket, it just isn't worth it. Instead, I have loads of other things that I don't want to do. Like, I don't want to sit at a laptop every day, even if it's for a half an hour.
Okay.
I don't want to. And my laptop is very slow. That's something that I've been putting off now. I need to buy one.
Yeah.
You know, so that's...
Okay, that will bring us perfectly. So we have farm, dried in the shed, crafted, and the laptop brings us perfectly now to sales and marketing.
Yeah.
Alright, so when you think of making traditional Irish baskets, the next thing you think of isn't TikTok, but it seems to be for you.
Yeah.
As in, it's where I found out about Auld Crafty. It's where you have a big following on it. What, how many thousand? Maybe
10.
Yeah, 10,000 followers. And would much sales be garnered off that following?
Yeah, so luckily on TikTok people can't message you because they have to be friends with you.
Okay.
So at the start I was adding people back like crazy, and then people were just sending me videos, and I was like, geez, I hate this.
Yeah.
So I started a campaign on TikTok where I was like trying to get people over to Instagram and Facebook. And then I started the website, and you can contact me through the website through email.
Yes.
And so yeah, I'm diverting is basically what I'm doing. I have the TikTok, but I'm constantly trying to get people onto Instagram, Facebook, or my emails.
Okay, but it was a stroke of genius to do TikTok because it grew for you big on TikTok.
Yeah, and I actually can't take credit for it fully.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a bit of like I was pushed to do it. So you know how I was giving away baskets to people and stuff like that. In January 2022, or sorry, in December 2021, I came home from England and I was supposed to go back. It was a job with the Museum of London, and I was supposed to go back, and I handed out baskets as a present for Christmas to loads of people. I have some great friends over in Brickens, like elderly people and stuff. So I handed out a few baskets, and one of the people that I gave it to, Mary Vahi, her daughter Michelle, people didn't know these people, okay? Dropping names. Yeah, so Michelle said to me, she's like, she was blown away for a start. She was home from London, and she was just blown away, couldn't even believe that someone was doing this or even knew how to do it. She's like, it's just so obscure.
I was the same when I found out about it. I was like, this is epic.
Yeah.
I knew you from back in the pub days, Hammy's Bar and the Town Hall nightclub.
Yeah.
I remember you working a broom and a mop very efficiently, cleaning glasses back in the day. So, and I came across you a good few times since in chats and that. But the basket making, when I found out you were doing that, I thought it was just so interesting. Yeah,
it's funny.
So go on.
Sorry.
She started your TikTok, is it?
Yes. Well, she encouraged me. This was only last year now.
Yeah.
We're coming up on a year of it. It's the 21st of December today. It's actually the shortest day of the year.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
This day's got small man syndrome. It's awful angry. Yeah, so Michelle was encouraging me. She's like, TikTok is the place for this.
Right.
TikTok is the place for these type of crafts. And I had those, you know, the Christmas break, you've got like 3 weeks or whatever. So I started it on the 28th, or the 27th of December. So just like the day after Stephen's Day, I posted my first video
on TikTok.
And I had started, or I'd made a promise to myself and Michelle that I would do a month campaign where you post every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That if you're going to do something, like, want to go at it, like.
Which would be your approach to most things, really. If you're going to do it properly.
Yeah, that's true.
Do it properly or don't bother doing it.
Yeah, but even at that, like, I wasn't even too worried about doing it properly, because I had read in my few days of research before starting TikTok that TikTok actually favours poorly made videos on the algorithm because they're more natural.
Exactly.
So I was thinking to myself, if they want poorly made TikToks, well, I'll give it to them.
Yeah, because it can be daunting for a lot of people. I'm talking about, you know, social media and marketing a good bit on this, because I'm interested in it, because I need to get mine up to scratch. It's not what it could be.
Yeah.
But the amount of times different social medias, they do push more authentic content from the individual rather than the big corporation with this massively really professionally produced ad.
Yeah.
So, and people kind of, and myself included, up until recently, thought that, oh, they'd only push an ad from Coca-Cola or McDonald's or these fantastically produced, millions put into them adverts. But they don't. They prefer the individual making baskets, or, you know, like you said, the poorly authentically type vlog style video.
Yeah, and just what you were saying there, you know that Ryanair is one of the most followed accounts on TikTok, and it isn't even like professionally done. It's just someone farting around. But I experimented too much though on TikTok, to a point where I actually got shadow banned halfway through the year.
Okay.
And that was my own downfall, but it's okay. Like,
did the Chinese Communist Party cut down on you? Did they?
Yeah, they didn't like what I was pushing.
What did you get shadow banned for? Can I ask?
Yeah, I in like the space of a month, I just changed my videos around way too much, where I was almost, where I was doing it half educational videos and not showing my face. And then I changed into doing B-roll footage of me just out and about around Mayo, like, and, you know, and then bringing cats and the bog and tractors into it. Do you know, like, this isn't, you have to stick with the algorithm. Yeah.
So yeah. Cats, the bog,
and Massey Ferguson 35s really ruined my TikTok. I should have just stuck
to the baskets.
I should have just stuck to the baskets and stone walls, and I would have been sound. But I went full country boy and ruined it.
But why would they shadow ban you for that? For am I missing something? Why on earth would they shadow ban you for that?
You have to stick to a certain type of video.
Okay.
And the algorithm favours that. Now, look, I'm not an expert.
Right.
And we need a fact checker, but I do think that.
Rooters are going to be flat out on this episode.
Yeah. I have traced it back to certain videos, but you can see in my view count that it is gone down. But it isn't something that
you have enormous view count on TikTok.
I suppose in certain ones.
Yeah, of course. Not every one of them you hit is, you know, going to be a home run, but like, you do have very big views on TikTok.
Yeah, it'd be nice to get them up though.
Yeah, well, you can never, that's the social media game, isn't it? You can never get enough likes, views, saves. But as a marketing tool, to bring it back to, like, you farmed, you dried, you crafted, and you're selling it, TikTok has been an excellent marketing tool for you.
Yeah, I've been lucky.
And it's been maybe not an excellent marketing tool as in, oh, they've bought from TikTok, but they have, it's been a brilliant funnel to take them from to the website.
Yeah.
Or brilliant funnel for, did you see these baskets? A fella in Mayo was making them. You know? Which like it's incredible. It's always been something I've found unbelievable, is how powerful social media marketing is, even with a small following. Like, I've always had a pretty small following, and just how much business you get off it is insane.
Yeah.
You can imagine how the people with 500,000 and 100,000 followers, how much money they're making off it.
Yeah.
You know, even with 1,000 followers, you can fill your gym, you can sell 100 baskets. You know.
Oh, definitely. I actually think what you're saying is that I thought that I needed a website. And now when I see how many sales are done through simply posting a picture on Instagram of a basket, and then someone will send that to you in a private message and be like, can you make me one of them?
Okay.
And obviously the website is up and I've bought it and it's done. But I'm not running it like an e-commerce site like I should be.
Right.
Instead, I want it handy. And
so they'd revolute you the money then, or whatever, is it?
I'm using SumUp. I don't know, do you know what? It's
no.
It's an online thing. I actually think it's an Irish company. But they have a card reader as well that goes with it, so I use the card reader then for my shop.
Okay.
For the website, I have the Stripe plugin, but I don't think that Stripe you can send payment links as handy with SumUp. So that's what I'm using for that. But like at the start, we'll say I thought that I would turn my house into this e-commerce warehouse for baskets, and that I would be working a website and I'd get up every morning and I'd check the orders and things like that. But it actually didn't work out like that at all. It was the in-person sales that was what I wanted to do.
You like in-person selling?
Yeah. The website was, I suppose, I had started making the website from February onwards, and it wasn't actually up and able to take payments until June. So that was a lot of messing around and tweaking, and in that space I had done my first market in Clare, I think at the end of April. I wanted a market where there would be a steady stream of people and it would be a weekly slot, so I committed to the one in Clare, and then I got another one in Kinvara in Galway, which is way handier than going to Clare. Kinvara's only an hour away. And when I realised that I would have a stall and people could walk up and actually pick up and hold my basket and give me instant feedback. You know, Irish people, they wouldn't hold back either.
No.
They tell you whether it's good or it's bad, and that was actually what I preferred. I didn't. So even now that the website is up and it's sold out, I didn't run it in the way that I intended to run it at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of steered away from it halfway through the summer. I started to steer away from it and think that it's in-person sales that's getting my name out there. It's word of mouth that's getting my name out there, and then people are actually able to see the basket. They're not just buying it from a picture. Of course.
But, and I ran into this myself, because I had the gym open 2-3 years before I had any social media, and probably 5-6 years before I had any proper social media. And proper is a very loose term with Instagram posting or YouTube videos. Even though your word of mouth, for me as well, has always been the best advertisement, you know, and selling to them in person. They call to the gym because their friend told them to call to the gym and this is a good place to train. Even though you have that, it's still very, very important that you just have simply a click buy now.
Yeah.
No interaction with Tom. They don't even know Tom is your name. They can just buy now.
Yeah.
And I've never had that.
But, true, yeah.
But I that's what I plan on moving into a little bit more in terms of my programs and certain information, you know.
Yeah, I think that, so I done well with the bird feeders and the links to buy for all of the smaller stuff, and a few baskets went in that manner, but I didn't actually enjoy doing it. Like, yeah, my aim for 2023 is to have the website fully stocked. That's one of my goals for it, and to run it the way that I intended to do it.
How hard is that?
I don't actually know, if I'm being totally honest.
The deep breath suggests it's quite difficult.
Yeah, like your hands are going to be sore.
Yeah.
And especially now in the lead up to January, I don't know how funny this sounds to people, but I'm going to be a St. Bridget's cross maker for the month of January.
Yes.
And you sit down and do, I don't know, 50 Bridget's crosses in a day, you wouldn't even be able to scratch your face, your thumbs would be so sore.
Yes.
Do you know? Yeah, like right now, like I didn't even set myself any goals for 2022. One of them was that to make good baskets, and the other one was to make a week's wages. So
you've surpassed that by a long way.
I don't know, we give it a go, like.
Yeah. We had said, off air that you're doing quite well. The demand is far higher than you anticipated.
Yeah, massively.
Okay. Is there a reason for that? You mentioned earlier on that you had an inkling once you were handing out the free ones, okay, I'm on to something here. How did you go from there to, okay, there's actually an excess of demand, there's more demand than I can actually supply? How did you go from one point to the other? Because by all accounts, you're doing very well, as in people love the product, there's a demand for the product, and it's hard to keep up with how much demand there is.
It is, yeah. But also as well, like, because I set the bar low and with goals and things like that, if I just get more organised, then things will fall into place. Like with the Workaways, I know it goes back to them, but if you have somebody living in your house who's peering into your business and how you run things, it forces you to get more organised, and it gives you a kick up the ass. And you procrastinate less. So the more organised I am getting throughout the year, and it is important to stress that I don't like claim to know anything or be an expert in any of this. It is kind of like, if you fuck around, you're going to find out in that manner. I do know other basket makers, but I'm not going to go down and copy them or hound them for information or things like that. So,
but to be a basket maker, this is my observation from the outside, who knows nothing about it. You need to have a lot of skill, okay? You need to have a lot of patience, and you need to work hard. So hard that your hands are sore, okay? It's not stuff that's easy to copy.
No.
Skill, hard work, and patience are very, very hard to copy. So even if someone does take the time to, go after and do what you're doing, they're going to earn it, and you'd probably admire them more than hate them.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Which I think people forget sometimes in business is like, it's very easy to be a bad copy.
Yeah.
It's very hard to be a good copy.
Yeah.
So, and plus they're losing a bit of authenticity as well, There's not too many people that are going to go pick and willow and actually put in the time and effort to it. So copying isn't really a worry for you.
Yeah, no, it isn't. It isn't. But I wouldn't even like other basket makers to think that I was copying them. And I've been lucky that even just in the year, well, in 2021 as well, I built up a relationship with basket makers, but I was very much just a novice, and there was good old novelty going around learning it. But in 2022, I got the opportunity to work for a basket maker. So I worked for him down in Spiddle, and to build up a relationship with people like that was important, and soaking up whatever guidance they can give you.
So you mentioned procrastinating there.
Yeah.
It's a battle we all have,
especially
when you're like myself, and I know you've mentioned this to me before in our Instagram message. Like, you can feel like you're just chasing your tail, and you have 100 things to do today, and I think you end up climbing Kilpatrick, or it's your busiest day of the year, and you end up going to the gym, and
I'd be up the side of the rig. Yeah.
And it seems to just happen though.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
Without even thinking about it,
yeah.
You just you've 101 things to do. You're busy. You're in demand, and that's the day you decide to procrastinate. The brain, the monkey mind starts wandering. What does a typical good day look like for you? How is it structured, and how do you keep from procrastinating? How do you keep the production line moving? The one-man production line.
A really good day for me is to go out in the morning. So I pre-make the bases on all of the baskets.
What time do you wake up?
I'd be out and about for 8.
Okay.
So I'd be at it for 8. And what my aim is to have a basket staked up immediately. And if I have a basket staked up and I put the sides on it and finish the border, if there's a handle on it, I probably leave the handle for when I come back, but I will get up and I will leave the house. I'll leave the station and I go for a walk or a run.
What time?
Around 3.
Okay, and would you have, you've had 1 or 2 meals at this stage?
Yeah, I would, yeah.
So what would you have when you wake up?
Maybe something simple, sliced toast or fruit or cereal or rasher sandwich, cup of tea, and then straight at it. Maybe for lunch then I'll have something light, especially if I'm going for a run. Yeah.
And that's the main form of exercise, is running.
Yeah, I loved it.
Running, hiking.
Yeah, love it. Because we've talked about it a lot, even when we were younger, about farm strength.
Yes.
Do you know that, farm boy strength?
I remember you were asking me about this. What's the difference between gym strength and farm strength?
Yeah, because like I've met these boys around and they're just moochers, just pulling, dragging, digging, and they're just horses.
Absolute animals.
Oh, the biggest.
And they've never lifted a weight before.
Never.
No,
never.
They're unreal strong.
Yeah. So I was fascinated by that. And even in football too, if I was to play a sport, I'd always know that I'd carry you through. If you just focus on the running side of things and being light on your feet, you should be sound.
It sounds like the simplest thing in the world, doesn't it? But nowadays it's less and less and less and less every year that people actually just are doing physical work, you know?
True.
That's why they go to the gym.
The sedentary lifestyle is bringing us to the gym.
It is. Now, I was never one for manual work or physical labour, but I was always playing sport or outside. You know, I can't ever remember playing the PlayStation or anything like that. I've never really watched any Netflix. I didn't have a TV in the house, Ellen Park. So but people generally aren't active. They're not outside as much, and it's interfering with their workspace, isn't it? I'd say the days you don't get outside and get active, you probably get less done.
Oh yeah. Like if I, especially with the short days, this was a really big one for me, where I had moved in from the shed. I wasn't working in the workshop, and then I moved into the front room. And with these short days, it's like I'm always in the house now. And then I'm just thinking, sure, I don't have a fucking boss. Just get out. And then in the evening time, the same story. I'd stake up another basket and I'll finish that.
Do you find it hard to draw a line between work and normal life? It's a constant work from the morning you get up till you go to bed? Because I know that's difficult.
But I was like that anyway.
Yeah.
Do you know? I really was. Even with sport, I don't obviously play anymore, and maybe I will in time, but I get absorbed by something. So with work, I knew that it was going to take me, and so now I'll couple that with running and seeing my family. You know, those are an exploit, or I can go outside of work and do those things, but now with the Workaways, they keep me fresh. So it is, without sounding like a freak, it is pretty much just all work. Work from the minute I get up in the morning. But I have the crack with it. Do you know, I'm not letting it...
And it feels like a hobby.
Oh yeah. I'm not letting it batter me up or anything,
Yes.
Do you know,
if you're working at a job you hate, it wears you down. If you're working at a job you love, you feel energized by it.
Definitely. Yeah.
And it's a shame that not everyone gets to experience that. A lot of people go through huge chunks of their life without knowing what it's like to feel energized and excited by a project or something that they get to work on.
Definitely. Yeah, being energized and excited by something is going to bed with butterflies by it, or
it is.
dying to get back at it.
Yeah, and it can be picking willow at the side of the road, or it can be like what I did when I started the gym. It can be just a few dumbbells in a big shed, or as I said in the documentary, concrete walls and bird shit, which was the gym when it started off. You know, if you're excited about what something could be, it can be the most simplest, humble little start ever.
Oh yeah.
And it can still be exciting as experienced businessman feels. In fact, I actually think because mine is more settled now and it's more structured and routine, I nearly missed the days when it was 50-50 or 60-40 failure to success. You know, now it's like 90% safe, as safe as you can be in business, no debt, things like that. But I nearly missed the days where it was just like you were completely winging it and you didn't have a clue what you're at.
Yeah.
Because the amount of skills you're picking up, I can hear from talking to you, you're picking up just so many different skills. From marketing to picking up the skill of actually making the baskets to growing the willow. You're picking up so many different things that your brain is switched on all the time. That's a great feeling.
Yeah, massively. And getting organised. Like I've notifications going off on my phone that I set 3 months ago. And like when it goes off, it might be something like Kieran Holmes' basket today.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, good job I done that.
Yeah.
You know, because I wouldn't have remembered on the 20th of December that I had to do this man's basket.
And do you use a diary or like pen and paper?
I do, yeah. I write lists. I write a weekly list. But
that's something I was terrible at for the first 5-6 years. And since I started doing it, it just like supercharged my efficiency. And back to the procrastinating, it stopped a lot of that too. If you actually just write down the tasks you have, pen and paper, the chances of them getting done is just, it's multiplied by 100. If you don't write it down, the chance of it getting done is just 0.
Yeah.
Even if it's
without
important.
a doubt. Yeah, like that's like that information is not going to stay in here. It's gone.
Yes.
It needs to be written down, and like getting more organized is like the key to having things running more
efficiently.
And that's only something that I'm reaching there now. Like,
but,
you know,
I think the incentive to become more organized comes from being more in demand. So when I started getting far more in demand for my services, I was like, okay, I better fucking cop on now and stop just winging it, going to the gym and seeing what happens. I actually have to start getting organized here. And you start reading books about, you know, time management and efficiency, and the incentive to become more structured in your daily routine, so that like the process of running the business is better, comes from being more in demand at your skill. So you nearly started the basket making like I started personal training. It's just a hobby, it's just a bit of fun. But next thing, everyone wants a piece of it, and okay, it's not just fun anymore. I have to actually run some sort of structured day and structured business from that hobby.
Yeah.
Switch gears a little bit, and I'll take you back. You mentioned this before. You mentioned Germany.
Yeah.
So you've done something that I'm hoping to do next year, which is travel through a lot of Europe. I visited Europe on city breaks and things like that, and I've absolutely loved nearly everywhere I go. I've loved. How did you end up in Germany, and is there anything you'd recommend to someone traveling through Europe long term? Not just a city break type travel, but more of I'm taking the car, I'm driving.
Oh, nice. You could probably do a few workaways.
Do you think?
I would definitely say so, yeah. And that'd be a good little key to be able to go somewhere and say you're going to give them 4 days a week if you can have 3 days off, and then you can like shoot off to different places if you have the car. Might be just one thing, you'd be driving on the other side of the road with
I know,
I don't know how that'll work, but
yeah.
I had a van when I was there, but I was on the right side. The steering wheel was on the right side.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, in 2018 I was working on a site in Roscommon, and the site was coming to an end, and the next one was in Dublin. I forget, it was out on the coast, northeast Dublin, and the accommodation was scandalous to pay for it. And I remember going through my options at the time, and I would have been maybe 22 or 23. And I remember going through my options at the time, and I was like, no way am I going to Dublin. Like, not a hope.
There seems to be a theme here. You're not a fan. You're not a fan of the Dubs.
No, it isn't even the Dubs.
Yeah,
and like my view of Ireland is not this like suburban cul-de-sac neighbourhood lifestyle at all. As far as I'm concerned, that place is built for the donkey, and we're going around there in cars shouting and beeping at each other.
Yeah.
You know, and when you see the east coast of Ireland, they've built it like the northeast coast of America with this low-rise sprawl that never ends. And that's just not my view of Ireland at all. And not that I'm shitting on it or anything, like people are free to think whatever they want.
Yes.
So yeah, I didn't want to go to a place like that was so poorly planned and built. But I had a fascination with Europe. I really wanted to go and see it and see how their cities work. You know, you hear great things about their cities. So Germany was the place for it. And with whatever money I had, I took a one-way flight and went with my backpack. I just had a few jocks and whatnot.
Spare togs is crucial.
Definitely. And yeah, it was just going to be an adventure. That was it. Whether if I came back, I came back. I was going to keep X amount of money for a flight home, and I'd be back on the sites, I'm sure.
So you didn't have any big savings or anything like that?
No, not at all.
No.
Not at all. A few €1,000 saved up, that was it. Then, yeah, so I went off and landed in Cologne first.
Solo?
Yeah.
Solo, okay.
Yeah.
Why did you land in Cologne first?
Cheapest flight. It was only €20. Yeah.
From that?
No, actually Dublin.
Dublin, okay.
No, it was Dublin, 100% Dublin.
Okay.
Yeah, and then from Cologne then I went around on trains. God, I was all over Utrecht, Bruges, Brussels, where else?
Are the trains expensive?
Yeah.
They are.
No, actually in Germany they are, but when you go to the Benelux countries, they're cheap. I think in Germany they're privately owned, so like it'd be cheaper to nearly fly within Germany than it would be to take a train. There is some deals to be got between like Berlin and Hamburg, but I think before I took a train, I forget where, but it was €80. So that's fucking expensive, like.
It is.
Now I know you're going a long distance, but if you're in the Benelux countries there, you can go around for €30 for the day.
And the Benelux is?
Belgium, Netherlands and Luxembourg.
Luxembourg, okay.
But at that stage, I was doing the usual shtick, like going into Irish bars and stuff like that, and asking for jobs, and you know, anywhere you get a few pounds just to keep you in the place longer. And
where were you staying?
Hostels.
Hostels, okay. You like hostels?
All right.
You meet people?
Yeah. I did, and I met some great friends, thankfully. And so anyway, I remember I was in Belgium and I realised that I had made a crucial mistake. I started to go west, and if you start to go west, it gets more expensive. Whereas for a fella like me at that time, I should have been going east.
Yes. And
stretching my money a bit further. But I had heard of a friend of a friend, this man from Castlebar is in a forest outside Dusseldorf, and he has a job. So I managed to get a hold of this fella. And I organised to meet him, and he was actually going to put me through the chainsaw course, but we were going to pretend that I knew German and that he'd teach me how everything in English when I was on site. And sounds very professional. I know, in fairness it was, and I was going to, you know, the usual safe pass and all that type of stuff.
Yes.
But the day came, and I booked all my train tickets and everything, and I was actually in Bruges, and in the hostel that night it was great crack. And I woke up the next morning with a Canadian fella kicking me in beside the toilet bowl, and I woke up and I was and sure enough, I checked the clocks, and I'd missed all the trains, and they were non-redeemable. So I had to ring this fella from Castlebar and tell him about what happened, and I was saying, to be honest with you, I only have a few €100 left. I'm not spending €80 again on trains. And he was like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I'm going to go east. So I went on an overnight bus.
How much luggage did you take with you? Was it just a backpack?
Yeah, just a backpack.
That's all you took to Europe?
That's it, yeah.
Okay.
A backpack, and I probably just had one pair of shoes at the time as well.
Okay.
And
is that what you'd recommend to someone going to Europe? The less you take, the better?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, if you're going to Germany, yeah, because I, for ages, clothed myself on clothes from the side of the road. There's and I know how like bizarre that sounds, but they have a thing over there called Zuverschenken.
Okay.
And it's a system where if somebody doesn't want something and it's in good condition, they leave it on the side of the road in a box, and you can pick and choose what you want. It might be books, furniture, clothes, anything like that, kitchen utensils, pots and pans. So that's a great system. So for ages I actually survived on that. I would have looked so funny lugging a chair through Berlin, but that type of stuff happened. Yeah, so I went east and I managed to stretch my money out a bit more there. And
but Berlin is not an expensive place to live relative to Dublin?
No.
No?
No.
Accommodation's expensive?
I went through a few phases there, but by the end of it, I had an apartment there, a full apartment. I think it was 60 square meters, and I had the whole thing to myself. There's 2 rooms, a kitchen, bathroom and living room, and I was only paying 600, and that was up until March 2020 I had that place, and my rent was capped. So it's pretty cheap considering I was in a European capital city.
Of course.
For 600, and I had a whole apartment to myself.
And I've been to Berlin briefly on a city break. It's a beautiful city. It's like you have everything you need in a city of that size.
Yeah.
So to 600 a month, it's very reasonable.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a very livable city.
Okay.
Do you know?
What's your opinion of Berlin? Do you like it? Did you love living there? What was your experience?
I was actually kind of interested by the way that they live, I suppose. Like they built their city all within 6-7 story buildings. The way that they lined them out along the street, the way that they accommodated the cars, the way that they've spaced out their green areas, incorporated trees into the city, how they move people around and the options to move people around. You've got the underground, the tram, streetcar, you've got the overground train, you've got buses, cycle lanes. All of that is really interesting on how they move people through the spaces within the city fast. They're not very, Germany's car dependent and they're car mad, but not in the cities. Do you know? In the cities, they're all about beaming people in tubes around the place really fast.
Yes.
And that's just so impressive how they done it on that scale. It's that was something that was cool to see. But in terms of living high up in this space in the sky for the rest of my life, I didn't like it. Do you know? I kind of like in Ireland, so there's 80 million people there. There's over 80 million.
In Germany?
Yeah, so the cheapest place to live is in the city. And in an apartment building, whether it's a Plattenbau or an Altbau or a house in the suburbs, but you won't have a full house to yourself in the suburbs. Not that that's something that I say everybody should have, but your path to it in Germany and in the UK and in mainland Europe in general is actually a harder path to that house and space than it is in Ireland. If you want to live in the countryside in Ireland, be my guest. And it's affordable and you can do it, whereas in Germany it's not.
No.
And not in the UK either.
No, it's insanely priced. You want to be extremely wealthy to do it on the continent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I don't get at all.
Why?
I think they obviously had to house more people, and in the post-war Europe everyone got a house, and the same in the UK. But I don't like that living in the countryside is seen as this luxury. Do you know? But that's just my opinion.
That's from us who've always lived in the countryside.
Yeah, what a privilege for us.
Yes.
To be lucky enough to say that we did, and we had all this space for us to grow into, you know. Yeah.
Everything. So did you enjoy, what aspects of the lifestyle in Berlin did you enjoy?
Well, in 2 years, you know, it's hard to fit everything in. Like, I done the usual things like joining a GAA club. I had a million different jobs when I was there. I was everything. And so I enjoyed like just the general daily life, trying to figure things out and stuff like that. But I didn't like sometimes how the city was so big where you had to travel for an hour to go to certain things. You know, yes. I didn't like that. And even in your car, like if you want to sit into your car at 5 or 6 in the evening, forget about it. You're in traffic. So there was some pros and cons to it. But overall, I was just interested in how they lived and how they moved people around and what people done. Like I'm very much like that, where I want to be brought into somebody's house and see how they're living. You know?
Yes. Well, people are very interesting. And if you're naturally a curious person, you're going to be very, very interested in how people live compared to how you live.
Yeah.
So, what I know, one of the big things in Europe for me is that they have 4 seasons. They have 4 seasons, and all are very, very different to each other. Almost like a children's book. You have spring, summer, autumn, winter, and they almost look like they would in a children's book, which we don't really have in Ireland.
Not at all.
That also leads to a better lifestyle in terms of outdoorsy things, because it's hot during the summer, so you do hot activities. You go to the beach, you go to lakes, you go to parks, you go skiing in the winter. You know, the leaves fall off, things get brighter in the spring, and the leaves fall off the trees, and it gets slowly colder in the autumn. That leads to a different type of lifestyle to here in many ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's very true actually. And it was pretty weird and like foreign for me to see people getting their ski gear and skate gear ready in the winter.
Yes.
So that was really, it felt like I was watching something from the movies.
Yes.
Like one year there, the canals froze over and they were skating to work on the canals.
Yes.
You know, like that's
incredible.
Mad. Yeah. But that actually only happens rarely. That rarely happens.
But they are within a few hours drive to a beach resort in the summer and a ski resort in the winter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and ski resorts. Have you ever been skiing?
Never.
Oh, you'd absolutely love it. So, how did you find the people in Berlin and Germany in general?
Oh, so different.
Okay.
So different. Very short, to the point. I actually think I've had to reel myself in since coming home. Like German people will just get right to the meat of the conversation straight away. They meet you, even especially if they want something. They're not going to like beat
around the bush. Yeah,
or butter you up or anything.
Yes.
They say it out. We need money off you, Tom. You know, something like that. Yeah. Straight to the point.
And how many areas in Europe? You went to a huge amount of different cities.
Yeah.
So if you were to list them, what?
Budapest, Krakow, or Warsaw, a few cities in Poland, some right random ones. Loads of cities in Germany, loads of cities in the Netherlands, Belgium, Austria. I've drove around Austria a good bit. Czech Republic, Hungary, Italy, Switzerland. Got to do a nice little tour of Switzerland with a friend of mine from Galway. She was an engineer out there when I was in Germany, so you could go down there, awful handy. Yeah. I've been to Russia.
You've been to Russia, to Moscow?
Yeah.
How was that?
Good. You know, the Russian people are actually more like Irish people than the Germans are. That's a hot take now, but...
Interesting.
I know that they're a post-Soviet economy, but they're actually in a similar strain to Irish people. They're a post-agrarian economy. You know, they're not long out of their serfdom or feudalism, but they're also not long out of working in the fields, and everyone coming from a farming background or a rural background, and we're the same in Ireland. We've only been transitioning really since the Celtic Tiger.
Yes.
So everyone has a grandparent, they were farmers, or a parent, they were farmers. You know, like I personally, we don't own any land, but I actually grew up on a farm. But we're not farming it today. And yeah, so I was very interested because the Russians are the exact same, and they're wild.
Yes.
Yeah.
And did you like that about Russia?
Oh yeah, loved it.
Further to Germany?
Just its people, but like obviously I didn't speak Russian. I had a bit of Russian because I was in a relationship with a Russian girl for a year at that point. Yeah, so it's just that I didn't get to unlock parts of Russia like I did with Germany.
Yes.
You know, when I learned Germany, when I learned German, I got to understand jokes.
Yes.
Or I'd be on the train and I'd listen to people and I'd be like, oh, that's what that fella's having for dinner.
Yes. Yes.
So I didn't get the same experience, so maybe I was just a bit naive to it, but yeah.
Okay. And if for me going to Europe now, and I'm going to Berlin first, is there anything I shouldn't miss? If you were to name 1, 2, 3 things that I shouldn't miss in that area for a month or two, what would you recommend?
One thing I was very interested in was all of the old RAF bases and the old evidence of the walls and the old evidence of the perimeters of what defined West Berlin. Now, obviously I was lucky to have a van at the time, so I was actually going out and doing this stuff. I wasn't just researching it at home. So I would go and try and find all the old RAF bases and the sites of the Berlin airlift and things like that, which I was super interested in. I really like how they manipulated the land around there, which is such a contradiction to the way I talk about Ireland. They had heavy machines and they knew how to use them. Like when they went to rebuild after World War II, they rebuilt it. Like, this was no joke. Like there's very few hills around Berlin. In fact, it was a lakeland or a fen swamp type land that the Prussians had drained. Or actually, we need fact checkers. Maybe that was a group of people prior to the Prussians, but it was the Prussians who really grew Berlin into a substantial settlement. And there is hills outside Berlin that are not natural. They're built from rubble from the war. And the tallest hills outside Berlin are in Brandenburg. They're just under 100 meters tall. You get a great view of the city. And that was interesting. A very interesting thing I found was Berlin in the 1920s. Before the Weimar Republic, Berlin was like, it was the center of anything that was new and high tech in the world, kind of like.
It was, yeah. It was very open to creatives and artists and musicians, and that's a fascinating bit of history.
Isn't it?
How Germany was like the pop culture almost center of the world at that time.
Yeah.
As in for like all things creative, fashion, art.
Yeah.
And people were intimidated almost by its potential.
Yeah.
And obviously what happened afterwards set it back.
Yeah.
An incredible amount, but it was a centre always for kind of
innovation or anything that was like, even do you know what Bauhaus is?
No.
That would be something I'd recommend for anyone to research. If someone's listening to it who came from interior design, they'd know straight away. But like, even at that, Bauhaus was such a small microcosm of what Berlin and Prussia, we'll say, had to offer. And like, even that was just so, it wasn't brought. Bauhaus was a place for interior design, and but I think it was to do with all sorts of design and architecture and creative minds. Like, some of the chairs that we use today were all designed in Bauhaus. Like the very famous monoblock chair that we see everywhere. There's probably a few out in that garden there. The Barcelona chair was designed in Bauhaus, and it wasn't until in the post-war era that they took scientists from Germany and brought them to the US, that one of the guys from Bauhaus became a professor in MIT, and he brought this school where he learned Bauhaus to legendary status. and it's still there today, and there's a lot of information on it.
So you would go to as many of the museums as possible?
I would, yeah. The DDR museum is good. The former East Germany, that's very interesting. Oh my God. Like they all had the same type of car. Very famous car, the Trabant.
Yes.
And it was just a bag of shite.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so funny. And it took 9 years to come. So a family would apply to get the car. They were going to get it for free, but they had to wait 9 years for it.
Yes.
And people became experts on rehashing and converting them, and all sorts like that, which is just so funny.
In the communist era. Okay. And is there any other areas outside of Berlin, maybe within a few hours drive, that you say, okay, you should go here?
Yes, the Sanssouci Palace in Potsdam, I definitely wouldn't miss. That is, it's the German Palace of Versailles.
Okay, and that's where the Potsdam Conference was, wasn't
The
it?
Wannsee Conference, yeah. Just down the road from it.
Okay.
You can go to the Wannsee Conference too. I actually went there on the 30th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, and I went there with my friend who's Jewish. And he was a hilarious man to bring to it. He was so funny. So yeah, it's poignant.
Okay, so we'll start to wrap up now a little bit. What is your favourite books, podcasts, documentaries that you would recommend, or what are you finding helpful at the minute in like a business sense or just informational sense? What do you like listening to? What do you recommend as your favourite book?
What I recommend is my favourite book of all time.
Or
is called Struggle and Strife on a Mayo Estate, a Prelude to the Land War.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's my favourite book of all time, and I'd read it over and over again. It's very interesting.
Struggle and Strife
on a Mayo Estate.
Okay.
And it's a very rare book. There's a few others, but like that one takes the biscuit. I read very regional specific books, so like the Clanwirish magazine or journal that comes out every year. I like that one. I read a few books of local people like Michael J. Reedy, an engineer from the town there, wrote 2 books. Clamaris in Retrospection. It's okay, it's a bit meaty, it goes in about the waterworks, which I found a bit boring, but then there's another one he wrote about the River Robe, which I found very interesting.
Okay.
Podcasts. Nearly every night I fall asleep listening to Finn Dwyer.
Okay.
He's from the Irish History Podcast. He's well worth a listen to, and he's well worth following on Patreon for the extra episodes. And then for day to day, I listen to David McWilliams' podcast and Eamon Dunphy's podcast.
Yeah, you told me about Eamon Dunphy's before.
Yeah, I remember that drunk guy from RTV. No, yes. His podcast is good.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's politics and history, is it?
Politics, history, current affairs, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then any documentaries that you've enjoyed or you've learned from?
Yeah. There's tons, but I suppose if I was to plug one or plug 2 that are kind of like Mayo specific, the Pipe Down is good by Richard O'Donnell. It's a documentary about the gas pipe in North Mayo, and then he also done one later called Atlantic. Those are 2, but like there's a lot that get awful specific. Yeah, I do love an old YouTube marathon, so I do.
Yeah, we all do at this stage.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Tom, it's been brilliant to talk to you. You're a wealth of knowledge. I have a feeling this is going to be very, very popular, and what you have to say is very interesting. And if people want to find you, contact you, buy a basket, how do they do that?
It's the best way is Instagram or Facebook. I also have an email address under the same name, but it's Auld Crafty. Owl spelled wrong. It's Ould with an O.
Okay.
Again, I don't know what I mean.
For no particular reason.
For no reason. It's spelled wrong.
Okay, so it's
OULD CRAFTY. Auld Crafty, and you'll find me.
You'll find out more there.
You'll find me easily.
Brilliant. It's been great to talk to you, and best of luck in 2023.
Same to you, bye. Thanks for everything.